Brad, it's the third Sunday of May.
What does that mean?
That means that by the time, well, okay, if you're listening at midnight Pacific time, you haven't, not by now, but like in a few hours, you and I, with a couple of friends, are going to be in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Headed south for the Bay Area Electronics Flea Market. I know.
As you're listening to this.
Home of Socket 7 motherboards and tables full of Wiis.
Oh, my God. Wait, I'm sorry. I started to say I'm so excited, but also tables full of what?
Last week they had, last time I went, there was a guy there that had like a table full of old PS3s, I think. PS3s, Xbox 360s, Wiis.
Oh, that kind of Wii.
What did you think?
I don't know. It was WEEZ is the spelling that came to mind. I was like, what is there? Was there a famous line of 80s computers called the Wiis that I was not familiar with?
No, like last time we went, there was a guy there that was selling a scale that's like the kind that you use in like high level chemistry labs when you need to measure something that's like 1,000th of a gram. It's the kind of scale that you have to wear gloves or tongs when you're using because it can weigh a fingerprint.
Wow. Yeah. So friend of the show, Steve Lynn, will be accompanying us to that thing. And I was talking to him about that scale recently.
Yeah.
He said it can weigh the ink on a check. Like you can weigh a check, then sign the check and put it back on and detect the amount of the weight of the ink that you used to sign the check with.
Yeah. I had a professor who, when he was showing us how sensitive the scale was, he put a desiccant on it, like something that absorbs moisture, water vapor from the air. And then he went, and he weighed the amount of water that was in his breath.
Okay, now let me stop you for a second. You're saying that scale was for sale?
Yeah, because nobody uses it's an old analog kind, and the modern versions of those scales are all digital. So this is, like, I'm going to go and tell you, this is a trap. My grandfather went down this hole as people with hoarding proclivities. We have to be aware of these things. There are things that had massive amounts of value when we were youths that are now going to be for sale for practically nothing because they're ancient, outdated hardware that nobody who's serious about things wants, and it's only for dipshits like us. So
it's really that outdated, though? I
mean, look, you can still weigh the same, but trust me, there's nobody is in a serious lab using an analog, super precise. I'm going to say this. And I'm going to get a ton of feedback from people going, well, I actually work in a lab where we do blah, 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 and we use analog balances and stuff. I don't think people use analog balances for that kind of stuff anymore. They're fiddly. Like, you can't tear them really. Like the modern digital one, you hit the tear button and you don't have to worry about the fingerprint because it just zeroes out the fingerprint. So, yeah, my assumption is that everybody switched to digital for that kind of stuff. It's like buying a typewriter today. They're only for hipsters.
That's all fine, but do you have a super sensitive scale in your house? Why did you not buy this thing?
Because I'm not selling drugs and it was really fucking big.
Oh, okay. I was just envisioning something on the tabletop. Is it maybe less practical than that?
No, it has to have a whole box around it to protect the surface. Like, because like air currents in the room will jack it up. Yeah. So you have to open the little door, put the thing in, close the door, balance it. And then, yeah. That's
fair. Okay. I did not envision devoting an entire corner of a room to this thing. I suppose that makes more sense.
Now, look, if they had a centrifuge, I would have been all up on that.
Then we'd be talking.
Then you know I'd be grinding up peas, putting them in vials, spinning them to get the pea butter out. I'd be all about that.
I'm sorry.
Wait, have you never talked about the pea butter?
It's too early in the morning for the phrase pea butter.
Okay, so peas are tripartite materials. They have the outer protein layer that's the green skin that you're accustomed to. There's a starchy inner that's kind of like just the pea filler that tastes like nothing. Then there's a fatty layer that's between the skin and the starch, and that stuff is called pea butter. And you have to in order to make like a pint of pea butter or half a pint of pea butter, you need like 13 pounds of peas or something. But I'm gonna go and tell you, it is the most pea tasting thing you've ever tasted in your life. It is incredible.
We have to stop talking about this. I'm sorry.
You can smear it on toast like soft butter, and it tastes like spring in your mouth.
I believe that. Would you say something tastes like pea? I think we should maybe talk more about Socket 7 motherboards.
welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. What do you think?
Wow, that was pretty good. I like it.
Yeah.
You should do more like we should do a morning zoo episode where we get like some horns and stuff, or like why.
Zukaru. That's the thing. It's early enough. I still got my morning voice. My voice has not gone to shit as it does every day later on.
It's funny because when we record like a morning part and then we have to do the outros and intros later on, you have to get your morning face on when we start. Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, I don't hear much of a difference.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't know you pretty well, I wouldn't notice your vocal failings at the end of the day.
Maybe that's the diabolical nature of ear bones.
It could be
the fact that you hear yourself very differently from how everybody else hears you.
It's entirely possible. I did something fun yesterday. My birthday was this week, and my wife and daughter surprised me with tickets to the San Francisco MoMA.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. We went to we went for one thing. There's an exhibit that's going through right now that's mirror rooms from I can't remember the name of the artist, but anyway, she's a Japanese artist who does like rooms with interesting things inside of them that are mirrored on all six sides. So when you get inside, they look infinite, and like they're really cool. But like that was like 2 minutes in each room, and there were 2 rooms, so it was a 4-minute exhibition basically for us. The thing that I was blown away by, I was blown away by that. It was very cool. But the upstairs on the top floor of MoMA, they have an exhibit called Art of Noise that is a kind of mixed media thing that's like a mixture of the kind of concert posters that they used to make in the 60s and 70s for shows at like the Fillmore and American Music Lounge and stuff like that.
Great American Music Hall
and Fox Theater and all those.
That's cool. I have not been to the Fillmore, and I'm too old to go to shows now, and I don't even know if they still do this, but bands at the Fillmore, do people outside of San Francisco know about the Fillmore poster?
The Fillmore, so this is what they had, hundreds of these on the wall.
That's so cool, man. I've got 3 of those framed on my wall here. I would have loved to. Well, maybe the exhibit will be there long enough I could go see it.
The exhibit there is there until August, so you can totally go.
I'm just gonna look it up real fast. If people don't know,
it's a specific like height and width. It's like 16 by 9, but vertical.
I'm trying to find
9 by 16.
Weirdly, the dimensions are not that easy to just Google. It is a specific size of poster, and the thing I was going to say is, like, when I was still going to shows there, like 20 years ago almost, a lot of bands that came through there would just give out posters at the end of the show.
Well, I was going to say that was the thing. Almost every time I went to the Fillmore for something, I walked away with a poster that was rolled up.
So I've got a Jarvis Cocker poster on my wall, and a Liz Phair poster, and what's the other one? Maybe Flaming Lips. I can't remember. I have to go look.
Well, so they
Granddaddy. I'm sorry. I completely forgot I ever saw Granddaddy until I just remembered I have that poster on the wall.
Wow.
Anyway,
yeah,
band posters.
So they have a bunch of them. Most of them are from the 60s and 70s. There are a few from the 80s and 90s because it kind of like it was a thing that people did to let you know about concerts in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s and 90s, it was other things. They had like punk zines from the 80s. They had a bunch of album art. They had posters for like like the famous Joy Division album. They had the Dylan print of the Dylan poster, the Milton. I'm completely blanking now because it's 7:00 in the morning. But anyway, famous music art. Then they had a bunch of designed home hi-fi and music listening gear. So they had like old Blanc Putin and B&O like hi-fi systems from the 50s and like things with cool spherical speakers. They had a bunch of teenage engineering stuff, including like the portable music player with the articulated spinny disc and things like that. They had old iPods and stuff like that, which was really funny to me.
I can imagine. When I was at the Smithsonian, which one? The Museum of American History? I think it was American. Yeah, American History is the one that's got the giant pop culture exhibit.
Yeah.
They had 2 things. There wasn't one area that was just like very early devices that matter. You know, I think I may have talked about this. Like they had an Apple I in there. They had multiple Dolby devices. They had like a full setup of the original Dolby
surround, right?
No, before that, I think it was in the 60s. Was it Dolby Noise Reduction? Is that what they called it?
Oh, yeah, NR removed the hiss from the tape, right?
So
yeah.
They had like the full original like giant setup that I assume has like straight up vacuum tubes in it and stuff that did the original Dolby Noise. Anyway, they also had an area of like here's essential creative tools used by used by people you know, and some of them were like, hey, here is this oh gosh, what's the guy's name? Like there was an iPhone, there was like extremely busted up iPhone in there, used by a fairly recent hip hop producer who like used it to make beats early on in his career.
Wow.
It was just kind of funny to see like an old iPhone there. It's like, hey, this iPhone made a lot of very important music. But anyway,
they had the turntable from Skateland in Compton that like Queen Latifah and like NWA and all those guys used, Eric B and New Edition, all the, I guess not NWA, but yeah, that they used. That was like where the birth of West Coast rap was. Right?
That's cool. That's cool. I should go to this.
You should go to this. You would like this.
I've never been to the MoMA. I just like feel bad saying this. I have nothing against art museums, but they're probably my lowest priority museum. Like I'm always going to go for a history or a natural science thing. We live walking distance from the De Young Museum here, and I've never been in there.
So the De Young I've been to a couple of times, but specifically for things that I wanted to see.
Right. But the thing I was going to say, though, is for art museums, I always envision just a lot of paintings and maybe some statuary, which, again, fine. Like, I'm nothing against it. It's just not the thing I seek out. But, like, hearing that there's both a, like, music culture and technology exhibit, I should get over there.
Well, so modern art museums are different in that they often have, like, mixed media stuff. So there's also, like, they also have, along with this, they have a hi-fi, lo-fi room where there's, like, this huge, super expansive hi-fi setup with like bullhorn tweeters, and you sit in this room with 50 people and they just play music, and like the guy in there that was playing yesterday was playing like lo-fi beats and like chill stuff with like a clicks from a record player going in the background. Which was very nice. There was also a teenage engineering setup where they have their choir, which is like they're like they're almost like gyroids from Animal Crossing, but they're these little guys, and they play, each one plays a specific register, and they play harmonies and melodies with each other, and they play like a mixture of like original compositions and then like synthy versions of classics, right? Stuff they probably don't have to pay money to license.
I think there may be a picture of these on the Art of Noise website that I'm looking at. Or they kind of look like they're made out of wood, sort of.
Yeah, they are made out of wood.
Okay,
with electronic stuff inside them. Okay,
I need to get over there. This all looks very cool.
And one floor down, which isn't, I think, part of this, but is similar, is a Swedish installation that a guy went to this old farmhouse, this like bohemian farmhouse, and they took, I think, 10 different cameras and 10 different performers, and they all played music in different parts of the house at the same time over a 64-minute period. And it starts at like warm up from before warm up, and you sit in there for 64 minutes and watch the whole show. And it's surrounding you in this long, skinny room with sound. It's really neat. It's a good museum. Highly recommend. So
That's cool. Yeah. Museums are cool.
So which takes us, I guess, to our next to our topic for the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a potpourri. We got a project potpourri here.
It smells so floral in here.
Yeah, I've got a hint of lavender, maybe some bergamot.
Mm-hmm. No pee though, thankfully.
Well, I mean, I didn't buy the centrifuge. If there's one this week, maybe.
Do peas have a fragrance?
If you concentrate the smelly parts of pea enough, yeah. Or alternately, if you eat asparagus and have that particular gene.
I guess anything can have a fragrance if you want it bad enough.
I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, Brad, the pea butter is a remarkable, like it is. If you ever have the chance, if you ever someplace and they're like, "Hey, we have pea butter," you try the pea butter.
Interesting. I'll give it a shot. I eat all vegetables, all fruit. Like I'm like the least picky eater you've ever met, but peas pretty far down on the priority list for me.
But imagine a pea that was like 1,000,000 times more concentrated than the pea you normally eat. Yeah. Anyway, so we're kicking off our potpourri. I guess we kicked off our potpourri by talking about the Art of Noise exhibit at San Francisco MoMA.
Yes, unexpectedly.
Yeah, it wasn't on the list, but we're going to talk about SteamDeck OS homebrew versions, basically.
Yeah, SteamOS, like ways to get the SteamOS experience not on a Steam Deck, I guess is what we're basically talking about here, or similar experiences.
Yeah, or ways to get the SteamDeck OS experience on non-Steam Deck handhelds is the other way to look at it, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I forgot there were other x86 handhelds out there. I was thinking more in the vein of your B-Links and stuff like that.
Well, so that's definitely my intent with these. So over at PC World, I've been working on this for a couple of weeks. We have the first video coming up. It'll maybe out by the time you see this, maybe early next week. But it's a look at HoloISO, which is a rebuild basically of Valve's of what Valve ships on the Steam Deck. So it's running Arch, it has Proton, it's immutable, it does all the things that your Steam Deck does. You can boot into the desktop if you want. It lets you run games with Proton. It lets you stream from Steam machines. You basically install it and then go through the same first time setup process that you do when you do a Steam Deck, when you set up a Steam Deck, other than the fact that it doesn't have a battery and it doesn't have some of the other controls that you'd expect from the handheld device, where it doesn't have a controller, it doesn't have a touch screen, it doesn't have the touchpads, it doesn't have a battery, it doesn't have a built-in screen.
Yeah. Real quick, let me jump in before we get too deep into that. Where the second project here will be a bunch of game mod stuff. Talk about Wabbajack.
Wabbajack is how I said it. I don't know. And Thunderstore, Overwolf, some other stuff.
Yes, oddly, we have both been looking at Fallout New Vegas lately in context of wanting to play a good Fallout game, and anyway, game mods, and ways to manage them are on the mind. So that'll be the other project here.
Yeah. So HoloISO is like, it's great if you have AMD hardware, because it actually installs all the drivers and stuff for the same AMD hardware that's built into the Steam Deck. So if you have anything that's in that family of RDNA APUs, you're good. If not, it's a little hinky. You have to know how to install drivers, and it not for everyone would be my recommendation.
I'm looking at the GitHub repo. First of all, this thing kind of strikes me as like what happens in the enterprise world around Red Hat Linux.
Yeah, when I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I don't think I really fully appreciated what they were doing over there. And this seems like exactly the same thing.
Right. So like in the Red Hat world, enterprise Linux is, I think we've probably talked about this some before. It's the thing that like corporations and like big institutions run, because it comes with a lot of support that is extremely expensive, but because it's all GPL, because it's all has to be open source code, because it's built on Linux, and we've talked about licensing before, because all that code is out there, projects like Rocky Linux and Alma Linux come along, take all the Red Hat code and just rebuild it and redistribute it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of work involved there, but the point is, like, Red Hat charges for support, but their OS can, if you put the work in, you can just take all that and rebuild it yourself and just put it out there. And this sounds like a lot like the same thing, where somebody is just taking all of Valve's sources for what they put into SteamOS and just kind of rebuilding it for other hardware. But in this case, like, what does Valve care? Like, they're not making money on SteamOS. Yeah, like if anything, this is probably good for Valve. It's getting Steam on more hardware out there. Like, I'm sure they're all for this.
I think they describe this as 99% Valve code on the HoloISO page.
Yeah, and like relatively unchanged, I think.
Yeah, like, it's to the point that you can update Steam by hitting the update button in the Steam Deck OS, and it just downloads the new binaries, right? Yeah,
but what I was going to say, though, is like you said, like, it works quite well on AMD APUs, because that's what's in the Steam Deck. Under the GPU section, though, NVIDIA GPUs, beta, Intel GPUs, random experience is what it says.
Yeah, and it's a for real Linux random experience and beta. So I don't think I would. Maybe the NVIDIA GPUs are okay. I haven't actually tested that. The Intel GPUs are not to be used on HoloISO as it is right now.
Oh, that's actually rough now that I think about it, because most of the B-Link and similar, like the kind of Intel NUC knockoffs, use Intel CPUs and of course GPUs as well. So that is a bit rough there.
So the interesting thing, we'll get to the hardware compatibility in a minute. It's interesting though, because like, in the world of those NUC, those small form factor boxes, there's not a lot of AMD APU based stuff that's in the $100 to $200 range, like, which is a real sweet spot for B-Link. There's a lot of like Celeron based Intel machines with 8 gigs of RAM and like a 256 gig SSD, which would be perfect for this kind of for like building a set top box Steam Deck that just don't exist in on the AMD side. The one that I tested at PC World is a B-Link that's a $750 box. That's like a real computer. Right?
Yikes. So is that the price range that most of the AMD APU based stuff is in?
They're 300 plus is where it kind of starts, depending on which generation of APU you get. They don't go down as low as the Intel ones. The benefit, of course, of using this one is that it's a little bit more performant than your Steam Deck APU.
Yeah. especially on the graphics side, right? Like and Intel integrated graphics, I think, is going to get a lot better. The next generation is the first one that's based on Arc. Intel's got their Arc discrete GPUs out there now. And starting with actually Meteor Lake in laptops, I think uses that now. But
it's just stripped down though.
It's going to be reduced. But all the Intel CPUs are going to be using Arc graphics going forward, which should help some there. But yeah, AMD's definitely got the edge.
Well, it won't help with HoloISO because the drivers for it just don't exist. But yeah, like the graphics on these small APU type machines are going to continue to get better. Now the problem, even though it is a faster APU than the one in the SteamDeck and it has a higher thermal profile, higher TDP, is that you're running at 1280 by 800 on the SteamDeck. So if you run Cyberpunk at 1280 by 800, it runs reasonably well on the SteamDeck. If you're running it on a 4K TV, it's not going to run like hardly anything ran at 4K, even on this $800 Steam Link box.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
This APU.
I bet it's decent for 1080p though, which nobody likes running at lower resolution than their screen, but like it's 4K, come on, you got to accept some compromises for small hardware here, but 1080p does scale nicely to 4K. So
I was gonna say I tested that and it worked. Okay. It worked quite well. The way you do the scaling in SteamDeck OS, it's important to note also there's SteamOS, which is the old Linux that they built for those Steam machines like 10 years ago.
Yeah, this is the most Valve thing ever. When I went to go read about this stuff, the Valve's SteamOS page and documentation is still for that very old Debian based version of SteamOS from like 10 years ago.
Yeah, they burned the good name on the thing that like 8 people bought.
I believe it's just if you do want to find info about current SteamOS, I believe they refer to it as like SteamOS 3.0 or 3.x.
That makes sense.
SteamOS 3 is the new Arch-based one.
So the scaling works. This is a place where HoloISO falls down because it does expect you to have a 1280 by 800 screen in your device.
Sure.
So the way that they do the scaling in SteamDeck OS in the SteamDeck OS is to fix the maximum resolution that the game sees. So like Cyberpunk sees a lower than 1280 by 800 resolution and then scales up using the internal scaler that's built into the APU. What that means is when you launch every game the first time until you go into the properties for the game in HoloISO, you have to change it from 1280 by 800 to whatever resolution you want it to render at, and then it will upscale from there to your monitor's native resolution.
Okay.
It works the same way it does on the dock, but there's a little bit of logic on the dock to change those resolutions in a way that makes sense when it detects the dock connected. So it's not completely seamless. It's like for me, I think probably this is a thing I might try to install on like an Asus handheld or another APU based handheld, but I'm probably not going to put this on a set-top box just because it is a little fiddly. The next one though is interesting. So there's this thing called Bazzite.
Bazzite?
Bazzite is how people say it on YouTube, it seems.
Okay.
It includes support for other hardware. It's built on Fedora. It still uses the SteamDeck, front end UI, but it also installs a bunch of other stuff that you want for playing games on a Linux machine, like Chiaki, which lets you stream from a PlayStation, or it gives you the option to rather. It lets you install EmuDeck, Chiaki, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll mention real quick before we fully move on from HoloISO on the topic of hardware support. I noticed in there, for example, under WLAN, which would be Wi-Fi, and PCI Express additional cards, they point out with the stock SteamOS kernel, like you basically need Wi-Fi hardware from before 2021. Like that's what is supported because, again, like Valve is supporting one piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Well, so of course
it's
not going to be built to accommodate all like your other random Wi-Fi hardware, but they provide an option here. I see for a more recent Linux kernel with more drivers built into it.
Oh, that's new. Yeah. I don't know if that had that when I looked at it last.
It's called Linux Zen. I looked that up. It's like it's just a newer kernel that a lot of Arch users run that just has a lot of hardware support in it. So they do have or I guess I should say work is ongoing. It looks like with HoloISO to start supporting more hardware than what's in the Steam Deck. But yes, Bazzite looks like it is a much more comprehensive thing for a desktop.
Like if you want to have a computer that you can play games on, Bazzite is a not bad place to start. It seems like.
Yeah.
You can choose to boot directly into the Steam Deck front end. It is also immutable in the same way that that HoloISO is, which we should probably talk about. I don't know if we've ever talked about that before.
We should. Immutable file system, immutable OS is like kind of the hotness in the Linux world in the last few years. Like it's getting way more common, like everywhere from enterprise. Like I've seen like people in the Linux channel in the Discord recently have been talking about like in the enterprise like Kubernetes world, OSs, like the quote unquote OSs are basically just becoming containers now. Like your whole like root file system, operating system is just a container. But even here with Bazzite is based on Fedora,
yeah,
which is kind of the like somewhat more bleeding edge Red Hat.
It's like the development branch for Red Hat, kind of, right?
Fedora kind of leads Red Hat in development, but there's been a thing I haven't looked into this too much. There's been a thing called Fedora Silverblue for a long time, which is made by Red Hat, as I understand it. It is put out officially as part of the Fedora project, which is that. It's an immutable version of Fedora. But it looks like Bazzite is using something called OS Tree, which I've seen around a lot, which is a more generalized way of getting immutable file system. Hey folks, Brad here from the future. After that probably overly long-winded explanation, I just did a little fact check, and it turns out OS Tree is in fact the core technology at the heart of Fedora Silverblue that makes that immutable. So those are very tightly intertwined. They are not separate things. Back to the show. What we should say is...
we should explain what immutable file systems are.
Okay. Linux is a lot, right? Like if you're a new user, traditionally Linux has been a lot to figure out, and like the risk of screwing up your system by doing something you didn't know how to handle properly is extremely high.
Something that seemed innocuous.
Right. Maybe an easier way to think about it is it's a read-only file system. Like you can't touch the important bits. You can't like randomly delete some library you need if you don't know what you're doing. And it versions your operating system. So when you get an update to the OS, you're just getting a new image basically, and it keeps the old ones around. And
then the file system lets you like put stuff on top of that. Like there's like a shadow file system that lives in your home folder or something.
Yeah, you'll have some user area that you can write to like normal. You can use the computer like normal. It's just that the parts that make the computer work can't be messed with in a way that'll break stuff. And I noticed right here on the Bazzite page, I think this is an OS tree level feature, but like if you run an update and something breaks, it keeps the old version of the OS around. And so you can just boot back into the previous version if the update breaks and keep going. Like there's no risk to your system when you're doing high level stuff like updates. And you can even pin old versions. So they're like, hey, just like pin the last known good one if you're installing beta drivers for your GPU or whatever. So,
oh, there you go. Yeah. So it makes it easier to manage, basically. Yeah. It makes it less likely that a Linux neophyte who might be using a gaming based Linux distro is going to jack something up to the point that they can't fix it.
Yeah. And let's be real, like that is the constituency for this kind of feature. Like Twitter algorithms obviously like serve you things that you've been looking at. So this is somewhat self-inflicted, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff coming across my feed recently of people who are like super unhappy with Windows 11, Microsoft telemetry, you name it, UI changes, like for whatever reason, they're just over Windows. And so seems like an increasing influx of people to Linux now that you can run games in it. For me, honestly, it's the Copilot thing is going to push me over the edge because it's so intrusive. That's the one.
It's difficult to turn off.
That's the one I was trying to think of and couldn't. I think the Copilot thing might have been the deal breaker for a lot of people.
Yeah.
As an aside, this is the most cursed phrase that I've heard in a while. We should talk about the apparently growing phenomenon of the Windows distro sometime soon.
Yeah, okay.
People are out there. There's some whole movement now of people making custom versions of Windows that you can download ISOs of.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great. What could possibly go wrong?
Supposedly like de-bloated versions of Windows that have like what they consider extraneous system services removed and stuff.
Well, I mean, there is an argument for like turning off the ad serving in the start menu and all that kind of crap.
Definitely. I think that the people who are doing this right are just saying like, hey, do that yourself. Like download a guide, like look at a guide and just do a vanilla install and do all that yourself. But maybe don't trust like some random distribution of Windows that somebody has messed with.
We do that with Linux, Brad. It's the same thing.
Yeah, totally same thing. Yes. Anyway.
Yeah. So, okay. Back to Bazzite though. It supports other hardware. That's the big deal. It supports NVIDIA hardware. It supports Intel hardware. I've run it on an Intel like NUC style, small, Beeling style, small form factor box machine, and it works great. Now, gaming performance not necessarily there because those machines don't have big GPUs in them or even big integrated GPUs in them. But if you want to build something that works for streaming, say from your big PC in your office or your den, into the other TVs in the house, it's fantastic for that. And it was relatively easy to set up even on like $100 Intel machine.
Yeah, this thing comes with a lot of stuff as I scroll through it. Like it has something called Lutris, which I've heard of before.
Yeah, Lutris is kind of a front end for installing other Windows game clients. So things like Battle.net and Epic Online and the Ubisoft store and Origin or EA, the EA store. It's not Origin anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. Gosh, this is the Epic, GOG, Humble Bundle, Steam, of course. I mean, Origin, like you said, the other stuff. Also looks like a lot of emulator stuff is supported here. MAME, RetroArch, ScumVM.
Yeah.
I guess this is like kind of a one-stop shop for just supporting every way to get games in Windows on Linux.
Pretty much. You know, it still doesn't support the anti-cheat stuff, like some of the anti-cheat stuff that, for example, Fortnite doesn't have Linux anti-cheat, I think, for pretty specific reasons related to Epic's relationship with Valve. But games that do have anti-cheat, like Helldivers, for example, originally launched without SteamDeck support. People complained and they started shipping the Linux version of their anti-cheat immediately, right? And it works on SteamDeck, it works on Bazzite, it works on HoloISO.
I guess that's the blocker for Fortnite on Linux, right? Like Epic owns Easy Anti-Cheat, right?
Well, Easy Anti-Cheat has a Linux version. Epic has chosen not to ship a Linux version of Easy Anti-Cheat.
Oh, that's even worse.
It's a political choice, not a...
Wow.
Yeah.
I assume there just was no Linux support for Easy is the only thing Fortnite uses, right? Is that is the anti-cheat?
I think they use multiple things.
Oh, they do. Okay.
My understanding is that there are definitely games that use Easy Anti-Cheat that work on Linux.
Oh, wow. I had no idea that they were. Okay. That sucks.
It also includes the Decky loader, which is a really cool thing that lets you take all of the hard part of all of these other add-ons is that you don't have an easy way to get them into your 10-foot UI in the SteamDeck UI. Decky Loader lets you do that. So it lets you look at all the stuff that you put into EmuDeck. It lets you look at all the stuff that you've put into Chiaki and the different installers, and it makes arted up blocks for the Steam UI for all of these things. So you can use one UI to rule them all, which is really, really nice.
That would pull in from the other Windows storefronts as well, like Epic and GOG.
I think, it pulls the apps from the other storefronts. You have to have installed them with the other storefronts in the desktop version. And then what it does is it pulls images and stuff from the Steam Grid DB, I think is what it's called, which is a database of non-Steam games with like key art in Steam's 3 or 4 formats.
Sure. Kind of a general question about SteamOS. How tightly integrated is Steam, like the Steam client, with the desktop? Is it at all, or is it just still kind of its own standalone thing?
So on the desktop, it runs as it's normal. It runs just like it does on Windows. The thing that it does on HoloISO, I can't remember if it does this on Bazzite, but they have profiles for gamepads so that you can like mouse with the right stick and right click and left click with the triggers if you don't have a keyboard and mouse attached. Which of course those only run while Steam is active. So if you have to update Steam or something, then you're not going to have any mouse control unless you plug a mouse and keyboard while the update's running. But other than that, there's no like there's desktop shortcuts that take you back to Steam, the 10-foot UI. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty light.
Okay, I got it. I asked because there's a section on the Bazzite page that says use your favorite desktop environment, and they've got KDE Plasma, which I think is what SteamOS uses by default, but they also have like the GNOME desktop. And I was just wondering, like, how much does Bazzite feel like SteamOS or using a Steam Deck out of the box if you don't change a bunch of stuff to replicate that experience pretty closely?
So the desktop on SteamOS doesn't feel super steamy, other than the fact that there's a Steam wallpaper.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Like you can download stuff from Dolphin, and like it feels like Arch with a little bit of a Steam tinge. It doesn't feel like Steam, if that makes sense.
Got it.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like it works. I was shocked at how well this whole thing works. The resolution, again, especially on the lower spec Intel small boxes, isn't going to be great. The next thing I want to do at PC World, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet, is install these on some of the other handhelds and see what the experience is like there. Because I think Adam over at PC World and I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago after Jeff Grubb had said something that he found controversial. just to pull all of our past lives together. Which is that he thought that the Steam Deck interface was dramatically better than the Windows based interfaces that Asus and MSI and all the other companies and Lenovo and the other companies working in that space have rolled out.
Wait, is that controversial? I thought that was a fairly common opinion.
I mean, it depends on whether you're looking for a console for PC games or whether you're looking for something that can play every PC game ever, right? The Windows side is better if you want mass compatibility. The Steam Deck, like the ability to turn off the machine, have it go to sleep and save your state in the game and do all the stuff that the Steam Deck just does because it behaves like a handheld gaming system is really nice. The Windows ones behave like laptops that you're playing a game on, which is always a bad experience,
right?
For me.
Yeah, I think
we talked about this.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I think it's kind of an open question if Microsoft is probably working on some kind of SteamOS style version of Windows for handhelds. Who can say? I
mean, before they started talking about Xbox as if it was a dead brand, I would have probably said they were, but I don't know if that's the case anymore.
Who knows what the business initiative is now?
Yeah, I don't know how you tie services to Windows for games. So anyway. So that's it. I'd be curious what people think. I'm sure that there are people in the audience that have been experimenting with this stuff because I'll say it's much further along than I expected. Like I feel like it's if you want a box that you can put in your living room or on connect to TVs around your house and stream your giant gaming PC. Just as an anecdote, we didn't put this in the video, I don't think, but we were testing in my one of these small boxes at the PC World office where they have pretty good internet, obviously. And I accidentally I thought I was connecting to a computer across the lab, but I accidentally connected to my computer at home and was playing Helldivers from like 15 miles away.
Wow. And
didn't realize it for a kind of long time because it worked so well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The future is now.
So yeah, like it was, I mean, it's obviously fiber at home, nice PC at home, fiber, 5 gigabit something internet at their office. So like we had 100 times the bandwidth we needed, but the experience was really good and like totally playable. And like I was kind of blown away. So yeah, like it's moving in the right direction. And I think it is, I think increasingly it's a viable option for people who want to use Linux instead of Windows and still play games.
That's very cool. Like I said earlier, I think that is an increasing number of people. That might be me if I was living a different life. Like I can't deal with any amount of incompatibility right now in the type of work that I do.
You play games,
right? Like stuff made for, I need to just be able to run stuff made for Windows without any headache whatsoever. But like, I feel like even I am kind of getting to the point where I feel like it would be cool to switch to Linux on the desktop if I didn't have those requirements.
2025's the year of Linux on the desktop, baby.
Finally here.
I mean,
it's only taken 25 years.
Like games and Adobe crap were the two reasons I didn't run Linux on the desktop for a long, long time. And games is almost entirely a solved problem.
Yeah.
And also Adobe crap is kind of its own solved problem as well.
Yeah. And increasingly the alternatives to Adobe stuff are workable these days.
So anyway, yeah, I'd love to hear feedback on Bazzite, HoloISO, if you've experimented, what you'd like to know more. We're going to keep doing videos about them at PC World. Including trying some handheld stuff, I want to try Bazzite on other hardware and see what it looks like. And yeah, let us know what you think.
I'll throw links to all these projects in the show notes if you want to look at them yourself.
I'm going to get yelled at for saying this.
Uh-oh.
Mods are back, baby.
I
shipped a game last year that had mod support, for the record.
Did they ever go away?
Kind of no.
No, I don't think so.
No, but they've ebbed and it's opposite of ebbed, flowed.
Ebbed and flowed.
I don't know.
Waxed and waned.
Yeah, they've waxed and waned over the years.
I don't know. Mods have never been more waxed than now.
Wait, is waxed big? I guess waned is small.
Yes, to wane is to reduce.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking about game modifications just in case it's not clear.
I mean, car mods are hot too.
That's true. You can mod just about anything if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, I looked for a thing, my new car, if I want it to lock the doors when I walk away, you can get a thing that when the lights turn off, you wire it into the lights and it triggers the it triggers the auto lock when the lights go off. So yeah,
wow. Aren't you leasing?
I am. I'm not going to do that while I'm leasing.
Yes. Anyway,
some dealers will do that for you if you complain to them, though.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you taken the same path to being interested in mods that I have? Because it turned out we were both looking at Fallout New Vegas mods independently, and in my case, it was really liking that Fallout show.
Well, okay, yeah. So my path started a while. I started looking at mods when I was working in the Anacrusis because we added mod support to the game like to 2022, I think, or 2023, and I played a lot of like games that had Overwolf mods back then, but it was pretty straightforward. Like, you know, go into their list and hitting a button and it checks it into Minecraft for you or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. When our friends over at A More Civilized Age, Rob and Austin and Allie and Natalie, were talking about KOTOR during the writers and actors strike last year, I was like, I'm going to play KOTOR. And then I tried to get KOTOR running by manually installing like 50 mods. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to play KOTOR again. They got to do a remaster of this thing because playing original Xbox games in 2024 on a widescreen monitor is an enormous pain in the ass.
I believe it.
I ended up playing a little bit on back compat on the Xbox because it was much easier. But yeah, so I also been playing Rounds, which is another mod game. I've been playing that for the last like 3-4 months now. But Fallout is why we started talking about this. Yes, that show is pretty good. It's like I showed it to Gina and was like, hey, do you want to watch this Fallout show? I'm going to watch this Fallout show. And she watched the trailer. She's like, no, I'm good. Have fun. And so it's like when I wake up in the morning and nobody's in the house, I put on my headphones and lay down in the living room and watch it on the TV. And it's quite good.
Oh, I was expecting some redemption story here where everybody in the house got way into it, but no.
It's too gross for everybody in the house because it's a Fallout show.
It's pretty gross.
There's like, look, the giant salamander with fingers in the mouth is a nightmare. I realize that's a canonical monster from the games.
And I find that one fairly low on the list of grotesquerie in that show. There's some really gnarly personal injury in there.
Well, it's kind of, it reminds me of the transition from like Doom 2 and Doom 1 to Doom 3 and the new and Doom, I guess Doom and Doom Eternal, right? Like when you're playing those old 8-bit, 16-bit early first-person shooters, the violence is a little cartoonish, and so like over-the-top gore and like 16 rib cages exploding out of some monster when you frag it are feel a little bit less violent than like the thing with subsurface scattering on the skin and yeah. Anyway, it's like I didn't realize Half-Life was a horror game until I played Half-Life 2. Really. Mm-hmm. So anyway. Yeah, that show's good though.
Yeah,
a lot of good cannibalism stuff. A lot of weird vault sex stuff. It's a real weird show.
It's delightful, and it got me thinking about finally playing Fallout New Vegas, which I have never played before.
I played the first 45 minutes of it several times, and then it bombed out or lost my save or did something, and I was like, I'm never going to play this game again because it's busted.
That's the thing. I think New Vegas is actually like the ultimate example of what we're talking about here, because to this day, everybody will tell you, hey, A, you should really play it, but B, you can't play it without 800 mods that fix all of the problems with it because it barely runs otherwise.
Yeah. And I looked at that and I looked at the list of mods you had to install and I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do this. Mm-hmm, and then we were in a Discord with a friend and the friend was like, hey, you can just use your Wabbajack to install all of these. And I was like, wait, what?
Yes, and they use the term Wabbajack in the most like matter-of-fact, contextless way.
Yeah, they didn't say Wabbajack in or Wabbajack off or anything like that. It was just like Wabbajack the mods in and you're good to go.
It was just like, oh yeah, the Wabbajack makes it really easy. And I was just like, I'm sorry, the what, Jack?
I had the exact same reaction to that conversation that you did. I was like, wait, what? There's a thing that makes this easy? And then I went to see if it worked on KOTOR, and of course it doesn't.
Yes, but if you go to wabbajack.org, it says right here, an automated mod list installer.
Yeah, and the neat thing, have you done it yet? Have you done the process?
I haven't messed with it. I did download Wabbajack and I've got it running right in front of me, actually.
Yes.
So I have a good sense of how it works, but it is literally just an open source mod manager that ties into the Nexus Mods API, which I didn't realize they even had an API. That's cool.
Yeah, this is why they have an API, is so you can do a mod manager that because I want to say one of the other a lot of the KOTOR mods were on Nexus Mods as well.
Yeah, Nexus has been the canonical like mod repository that everybody uses to me. I know now there's Overwolf and like mod.io, but those are like businesses.
Nexus is a business Nexus,
too, right? But from the ground up though, like Nexus Mods, I think has been around forever and started as a more grassroots thing and now monetizes, right?
So from my research doing the Anacrusis stuff, it all depends on the game. Like which store is the popular one depends on the game you're talking about. Like Overwolf is wildly popular for Minecraft mods.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
And it's all segmented. What's the Australian site? Mod.io, I think.
Mod.io.
Mod.io is a lot of like source games and first person shooters and stuff like that don't have Steam mod support. Steam actually has wide mod support and a pretty good infrastructure. The problem with Steam is that it only works on Steam, so you can't you can't do mods on consoles and stuff like you can with Overwolf or mod.io. Anyway, Nexus Mods API is really cool. And it means that, especially if you pay for API access, you pay for their fast download service, which is maybe the first time that's ever been worth paying for. You don't have to click buttons to install 150 Fallout New Vegas mods.
Yeah.
I clicked 153 download buttons separated by 5 seconds each.
Sure.
Because I'm cheap and unemployed. Or lightly employed, I guess. And I just did it in the background while I was doing other stuff one morning.
It seems pretty nice from clicking around. I mean, like it's just an exe that you download. There's not even an installer, but you open it and it's just immediately right in your face, like a nice illustrated browser. Nice key art for every mod pack. You just kind of go through and kind of one click install stuff. It seems like.
There was still on each of the mod packs, there's still hey, you have to do this other stuff afterwards. But it's like it was a relatively manageable list of like 4 tasks, not 4 tasks for each of the 150 mods that you wanted to install. So highly recommended. I played like 2 hours of Fallout New Vegas after installing all this stuff. Didn't crash. I did like that they said, hey, if you're using AMD hardware, you got to use DXVK because the Vulkan implementation fixes the crashing that happens on AMD cards. Which it's amazing that game is like 10 years old, 15 years old now, and still has AMD crash bugs.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it felt like the thing that I will say is that the mods that were in this, we were recommended the Viva New Vegas pack.
Yeah.
To play this.
Yes, which it seems like an absolutely monumental amount of work to install manually.
It would be. I don't
like
know
an afternoon.
I don't know that you could successfully do it because I think if you miss one step along the way, you'll be out of sync and stuff will get jacked up.
Yeah.
That was what happened with KOTOR. Basically, is it was the same kind of thing. Like install 100 mods to fix like wide supreme support and mouse stuff and high resolutions and all that stuff. And then if you missed one thing or didn't do one thing right, it didn't throw an error and you had to start over from the scratch.
Yeah. This is pretty great because. I mean, A, I don't have time to play old games realistically anyway, but B, if I did, the thing that would have kept me from playing New Vegas is just the uncertainty around, like, what do I need? Like, what is the canonical set of mods I need to fix this game and make it playable and modern? And, like, researching that and not just doing the research, but also, like, trusting an authority on it is tough. It's like, is this Reddit post from 4 years ago the list that I need? Is this Steam community thread that's 6 months newer the one? Like, it's just like, I don't know what to do, but this really does make it pretty one click to just say, hey, I've probably or close to
152 clicks.
152 clicks, but you know what I mean. The point is though, like, okay, this is probably the closest thing to a canonical list of necessary mods that exists for this game to just get me going.
Yeah, and like I will say, it felt really good. It felt like Fallout 4 when I was playing it, right? Like it felt like the mouse movement felt right. The key bindings were all good. The inventory stuff was relatively manageable. It was it felt like the nicest thing I can say about a remaster is that it feels like I remembered the old version of the game playing when I played it. And this felt like I remembered playing Fallout 3 when I played it on the Xbox or PC back in the day. So
that's good. That's good. This is a random aside. I became aware of this mod. Have you seen this in looking at this stuff called A Tale of Two Wastelands?
Is this the one that connects the two Fallouts?
Yes. It integrates all of the Fallout 3 content into the New Vegas engine and makes them both.
Wow.
Apparently there's like a tram or something. There's some kind of shuttle
from like DC to Vegas.
Yeah. There's like some in-world shuttle that you get on that you ride between the two games, but you're using the same character across both games.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know if you get to pick which game you start in, or you might have to start Fallout 3 for. I think I think it might be mandatory you start in Fallout 3 and make your character there, but then, same level, same perks, same everything that you just take back and forth between the two games, which is apparently like quite a nice way to play those games, and brings like Fallout New Vegas quality of life UI stuff back into Fallout 3, which is cool.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I remembered this from before. I had a save in Steam for Fallout New Vegas, which I thought was funny. It just downloaded when I downloaded the game.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I remembered that Fallout New Vegas is the one that starts with you not being a vault dweller. Like, this is a minor spoiler for the first like 2 seconds of the game, I guess. So I apologize if people are upset about a 20-year-old game. But that feels like not a Fallout. Like, I feel like Fallout games, you should always be a vault dweller, right?
Yeah.
Nice to have an origin, right?
Well, yeah, but I'm torn on that kind of stuff. Like, it's also nice to kind of let go of the sacred cows of a franchise sometimes.
Well, that's true.
In the sake of doing something new.
That's true. It plays well. I was stoked.
That's cool. I would like to play it at some point if I ever had the time.
If only you had some sort of a stream where you could load it up like one day a week and play a couple hours.
Well, I am currently playing Fallout 1 on a stream.
Oh, man, that's a mistake.
So I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So I've only done one stream, but it was a pretty long stream, and I quite enjoyed it so far.
I think I bounced off of that in the 90s, but it might have been when first-person shooters were starting to come out, and I was like, oh man, shooting stuff in the face more than shooting them from overhead.
Literally exactly my case. I was too busy playing Quake and other first-person shooters to even pay attention to the release of something like Fallout.
Should we talk about rounds for a sec? Because it's the way they do. It's a more modern game, which I think is relevant.
The last thing real quick before we move on from Wabbajack, I just wanted to note how kind of necessary stuff like this is these days. Like, the mod ecosystem and just like the use of mods has become so huge. I was clicking around in the gallery for games and mods that are supported by this thing. I ended up with something called Slitikin's Strenuous Skyrim. And I looked at the description for it. Like, this is not the first time I've seen something like this, but it says Slitikin's Strenuous Skyrim is an add-on for the Phoenix flavor. And I'm like,
what
the hell is but you might guess the Phoenix flavor is already a very comprehensive like mod total conversion type thing for Skyrim. So like,
oh, of course.
The point is there are named mods for named mods for named mods at this point, like mods for mods for mods. So like that just makes this kind of thing even more necessary with this kind of layered meta mod situation going on.
Well, and there are mods with dependencies is the other thing that's important to like this is why I wanted to talk about Rounds, is because Rounds is a Unity game that came out a couple years ago. That's an arena combat, like one screen arena combat game where you control these little balls and you shoot each other. But the interesting thing about it is it has a perk system. So everybody starts with one perk, and the perks are like your bullets are big, or your bullets do like more damage but move more slowly, or stuff like that. Usually there's something good and something bad about them. When you win, you get nothing, but when you lose, you get another perk. So it kind of automatically rubber bands, and by default, it's a 1v1 game, which is fine, but it lacks an element of chaos that I kind of appreciate. When you add mod support, you can play with up to like 12 players. So you have these little tiny arenas that are designed for 1v1 fights with 12 people just wailing on each other in there. And each time you lose, 11 of those 12 people get more powerful, and it becomes chaos. Like I play this on my stream fairly regularly, and it's a game that we kind of play to the death, which means when the PCs can no longer handle the amount of graphics nonsense that's happening on the screen and the game crashes, that's when we stop.
It's a good time to tap out.
Yeah. But the neat thing about it is Unity, a lot of Unity games, if you know the function calls and the names of the function calls you're trying to inject code into, you can just add your own code. And because Unity is relatively easy to decompile and break down and like extract the projects from the shipping games, it's a possibility.
To be clear, not a supported feature though of Unity.
People have if you document your API calls and stuff like that, it absolutely can be. If you don't, and people have to reverse engineer it, it is not. How's that? You can manually install a bunch of these mods, but like I said, they're almost all of these have dependencies. So like there are mods that depend on bug fixes from the original game where people changed the way the calculations on such and such happen, and you have to have those dependencies installed for other mods to work and card packs and all that stuff. So like there's kind of broad categories of quality of life stuff, new maps, new weapons, new perk cards, and then the underlying architecture. And in that case, you use Thunderstore, which is now a part of Overwolf, to manage that, because that's where the ecosystem for this mod community lives. Mods are so popular for that game that they just rolled out. It just released on Game Pass a couple of weeks ago. And when they did that, they updated it for the first time in like 2 years and added crossplay. Of course, all the people who made mods 2 years ago for this have kind of moved on to other things now. So it immediately broke compatibility with every one of the 2,000 mods in the mod store. And as a result, they had to roll out, and they put a branch on Steam for mod players that like gives you access to the most recent mod compatible version of the game.
That's a really funny use of the Steam branch feature. Usually it's for betas. It's for like, hey, here's the next version we're testing or whatever. But like just to be like, hey, we're just gonna keep a legacy version around because we can't get people to port all this stuff over.
I'm going to tell you my favorite of all time, which is Dead Cells. Dead Cells, you can go back and play every release version of the game. They have a branch.
Wow.
They never retire the old branches.
Oh, that's kind of amazing.
Yeah. So
that's very cool.
Like if you want to play launch Dead Cells, you absolutely can on Steam. It's amazing.
Do they like disable achievements for old versions? Because sometimes you're going to like balance things in a way that like, oh, you nerfed this thing, it might be harder to get the achievement now. They probably don't care.
I think their balance has gone the other way typically.
Okay. So
generally it becomes a little bit easier, or they did change the way the shields worked at some point in that game. But anyway, it's a good use of the branches. Yeah. So highly recommend. Like Thunderstore was interesting because it does the same thing Wabbajack does. It's a little bit easier, and they actually have a neat thing where you can share, because you have to, like, if I want to play with you and play with the mods, we have to have the same mods installed because it's a multiplayer game. It doesn't work obviously with different mods installed. I can just share with you like a 16-digit code, and it'll sync those. It'll download that mod kit and just download it automatically, and you launch the game from inside the Thunderstore mod manager, and you're good to go.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's very good. A lot of good stuff happening with mods, it turns out.
They're hot.
Yeah, it's all the hotness.
In the business world with like Overwolf and mod.io, like we said, like it's kind of a big thing. Like it feels like Roblox probably has driven a lot of the ascendancy of the mod in the business world, right? Like
I don't know if Roblox is user generated content, but it's not really mods because you can't, because all that stuff lives inside Roblox.
Right. Or maybe UGC is a better term than mod there. But like, yeah, that's the thing everybody's kind of looking at now, right? And saying like, hey, we need that.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think a lot of this started with Dota. More like the people who are serious about it have been thinking about it since Counter-Strike and Team Fortress and those games. Because you look at, like, if you look at the most popular games in the world, like half of them are mod based, started out as mods.
Yep.
Like even imagine.
Even Fortnite, even arguably, was an officially sanctioned internal mod for Fortnite.
Yeah, and you think about how different the world would be if Blizzard had Warcraft 3 available for sale when Dota was exploding. Oh yeah, because remember, you couldn't buy Warcraft 3 to play Dota when Dota was taking off. No, you had to find a physical copy of it someplace.
Retail copy was. Oh, I guess
it wasn't on BattleNet then.
God, it's. Digital distribution is like such a built-in these days. It's hard for me to even remember when that started, but I guess you're right. There was no way to buy it online at that time.
Yeah, so that's why Riot started, was to make a version you could play, and Valve obviously did the same thing. I think a lot of that, like the thing that happens, look at PUBG. PUBG came out of a mod for H1Z1, which was a DayZ mod, I think originally. Mm-hmm. Like there's a legacy there. Yep. Like all of these games, people do a lot of really interesting innovation in these spaces. And I think that like Epic is trying to capture it with the UEFN stuff, which is their Fortnite. It's like a souped up version of the Fortnite editor that lives between UE5 and the Fortnite in-game creation tools, right? Yeah. The Roblox stuff is really interesting. You look at like Bloxburg selling for $100 million. Bloxburg? Bloxburg. So imagine Bloxburg is a Roblox game that you can basically design and build houses. You have to earn money in game by selling pizzas and mining and shit like that. And you use that money to buy decorations and stuff. And you can like build and furnish homes. but because it's in Roblox, it's all multiplayer. So you can get in, and then you and your friends can play in those virtual homes in the same way that you and I play in a first person shooter or something. But imagine it's The Sims, but multiplayer, and you control the people instead of having to try to convince them to do your shit for you.
I started to ask who. This is the first time I've ever heard of a Roblox mod or a Roblox like mode add-on being acquired, and I started to ask who acquired it. I just assumed it was Roblox, but no,
it was the Embracer Group.
It was the Embracer Group.
They've been embraced.
Bloxburg
makes a phenomenal amount of money, like a truly astounding amount of money by microtransactioning the shit out of children.
That's wild to sell something in another game for that amount of money is completely crazy.
Well, I think the assumption is they're going to eventually build a standalone version that doesn't live inside Roblox, but the other, like, you look at that and then you look at something like The Sims, right? And like my daughter has a relationship with Bloxburg because she can play in it with her friends. I bought her The Sims. She likes The Sims. She plays The Sims, but she makes these cool houses in The Sims, which is the part she enjoys. And then there's no way for her to share that with her friends. Like her friends can't bring their Sims over and play in her house. It's an incredible missed opportunity on EA's part. So anyway, I assume that's what Sims 5 is going to be should that ever ship. But yeah, games are weird. Mods are the future, man.
Games are weird. Never have truer words been spoken.
Look, last week we talked about RSS. We talked about web rings. Everything that was cool in the 90s is cool in the 2020s.
Yeah, it's coming back.
I'm going to get my cargo shorts on.
But frankly, there's nowhere to go but up at this point.
We need to make a new internet is the next step.
It would be hard for things to get much crappier out there online right now. So
I don't know, man. I set up fresh RSS last week.
Yeah.
I am enjoying the heck out of it. The thing that cool. Wes said that resonated with me was, I just, instead of doom scrolling Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, now I just, when I have something to do and I have 5 minutes on my phone, I load that up and read the first thing that looks interesting. And it's been a real quality of life improvement.
Yeah, I've been thinking about deleting Twitter, trying to purify my online consumption a little bit.
Cleanse.
At least deleting it off of my iPad, so I'm not just sitting there scrolling aimlessly all the time. I had just randomly before we wrap up here, I had a thought about Fresh RSS the other day.
Ooh,
which is, I mean, it's pretty specific to what we do, and especially with Nextlander because we have 800 podcasts and stuff. But one feature that Patreon has yet to implement, I hope they're working on it, I don't know for sure, is separate RSS feeds for different podcasts.
Ooh, yeah.
Right now, if you support a Patreon, you only get one RSS feed, and any podcast that they put out on that entire account all comes down that same feed. I would assume you could make pretty easily your own RSS feeds in Fresh RSS or something similar and just set up very, very simple filtering and generate your own feeds.
Maybe.
I assume you could have it categorize those into different buckets and then attach a separate RSS feed to each of them. I don't know for sure that it has that kind of functionality, but that's very basic. So
you can run scripts, I think. I haven't looked at it that much. I haven't looked at that side of it. I'm basically using it as a collector and front end.
Right.
But like I have a script that it automatically expands news stories. Is an extension I installed that automatically expands, like it automatically clicks the read more link and then scrapes that stuff out and puts it in the RSS feed. So when I connect to it with Reader on my phone, it works.
That's cool. It's cool that exists.
Yeah, it's a neat thing. Highly recommended.
A lot of neat things out there these days if you know where to look.
If you wanted to find a place to look for neat things, what better place than the TechPod Discord?
True. Legitimately true.
You can gain access to the TechPod Discord for as little as $5 a month. You can go to patreon.com/TechPod. We're a listener-supported show, which means that we wouldn't be here without the support of listeners like you. Again, it's patreon.com/TechPod. And for $5, you get access to the Discord, which is full of thousands of nerds just like you. You get access to our monthly patron episode where we talk about, like, actually this potpourri episode this week is kind of like our patron episodes often are, where we're talking about what we're working on, maybe a little more structured this week. But yeah, we love to have new people come in. We love to have new listeners join the conversation. Last week's thread in the Discord was a lot of people sharing blogs that they like old school indie web blogs. So a lot of good info there. A lot of good tips on how to pull RSS feeds from sites that don't maybe make them super visible. Didn't have anybody sharing Posse tools, the post once share simultaneously everywhere tools, but I'm still hoping for that. I think those tools are maybe a little bit earlier than the indie web stuff. And so again, you can go to patreon.com/techpod, sign up. We appreciate all our listeners and want to thank all of our supporters and listeners.
We sure do.
But we want to give a very special thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, including Andrew Slosky, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, the original period, Joel Krauska, who unfortunately I missed last week or wasn't in the list last week. Thanks for your support, Joel, and we apologize for missing you. Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer.
Yes, thanks to one and all.
Thank you all so much. And I guess that'll do it for the show this week.
Yes, Q&A next week. We should mention Q&A.
Q&A next week.
The
week after,
maybe.
Well, either the car. We'll talk about I got the Ionic. We were going to talk about that at some point. Mm-hmm. And then we also still owe you all the second part of the digital part of the video episode. Yes. We've gotten some good feedback on that. Some maybe formats that we maybe didn't think about in the analog section of the home video episode. So that'll be coming in the Q&A next week, I hope.
Yes. Yeah. Questions, get them in to the Question Seeking Answers channel on the Discord.
Yeah, or you can email them to techpod@content.town and we will see them there. So anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you all next week.